Welcome to our next online talk of Maxine in English, Science Goes Public. And I'm very happy to have you again here. Every Tuesday, scientists present their parts of their work of our institute in this online format. Today, I'm very happy to have you here, Adriana. Adriana Maldonado-Chaparro, you are from Colombia. You have been with us for quite a long time. How many years was it?
4 years.
4 years. And now since, I think, half a year, you're back in Colombia.
Yep.
Working there at?
Universidad del Rosario.
In Bogota.
In Bogota, yes.
That's where you also studied, right?
Yes, I did my undergrad and my master studies here.
What I learned to
university, at a different university. So
what I learned today that you also studied at the beginning philosophy.
Philosophy? No. Just biology.
Okay, then there, I got something wrong here, sorry. Okay, so today the title of your talk is Colombia as Stories of Capybaras and the Eastern Savannas. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And I'm looking forward really to this talk. It is something totally different which you did in Radovcel. Maybe you would like, I would love to have you say in 2 sentences what you did before or after, what you did in Radovcel at our institute. You worked first with Martin, is that right?
I worked first with Damien Farin. So when I arrived to Radovcel, I went there as a postdoc in Damien's Farin lab. I joined his lab when he was just starting it back in 2016. Well, he started in 2015 and I joined in 2016. There I work with birds, looking basically at how individual variation in social behavior affected group dynamics. And I was specifically looking at mating systems. So how social behavior affects mating decisions, and how will this translate into being a monogamous mating system or a more promiscuous mating system. And this was part of the job I was doing there, which is totally different from what I'm going to present today, which is mostly work that I did when I was doing my master's studies here in Colombia, and after that, when I started working as a biologist.
So the work you present today is mostly the work which you did before you were in Radovcel. And what is this capybaras? What is this kind of animal? What is it?
Yes. Well, I will tell you a bit more about them during the talk, but capybaras are these little tiny things here in the photo. Just in the photo, they look little, but they are the largest rodents in the world. They can weigh up to 60 kilograms. So it's a huge animal indeed. They live in groups, very large groups, some of them. And what else? They often say that they look like a pig. So
they look like what?
Like a pig.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like a huge pig, but indeed it's a rodent, like a rat.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So, Adriana, I would like to say something to the audience. Please feel free again to ask questions. If you like to ask questions in our chat, sign up in the YouTube after the talk or now, so you can write in the chat and we will ask these questions afterwards to Adriana. And Adriana, I'm looking forward. I have heard already little small pieces of this talk, maybe with our young scientists, and I'm glad that you do now this talk with the older ones. Thank you very much, and go ahead with your talk.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Babette, for the invitation to participate in that series of talks. I really enjoy participating in the Maxine activities. And also I want to thank everyone for attending the talk. And as Babette said, my name is Adriana Maldonado-Chaparro. I'm from Colombia. Until early this year, until January more or less, I was a postdoc at the Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior. And now I moved back to Colombia, where I'm a professor at the Universidad del Rosario. The work that I'm going to present you today, it's work that I did before I went to Germany. It's part of my master's thesis and other work that I did afterwards. So it's quite old, but it's also a work that has inspired most of my research afterwards. Okay, so I'm not quite sure where you lost me, but we had some technical issues here. So I'm going to go back to this slide where I was telling you that perhaps in previous talks you have heard about the Amazon rainforest, but today I'm going to talk to you about a less known area of my home country, which is the eastern savannas, and this is where I did my research in capybaras. So as some of you might have heard in this previous talk, Colombia, despite its relatively small surface, is one of the most diverse countries in the world. And this is in part due to its location. We have 5 major geographical regions. The Caribbean coast on the north, the Pacific coast on the Pacific Ocean, the Andean mountain range, which basically holds most of the cities that we have in our country, and this includes Bogota. And then we have the Amazon rainforest, which perhaps some of you might have already heard about in the previous talks of this seminar series, and also because the Amazon rainforest has an enormous biodiversity. But as I said, today we're going to talk about the grassland plains. This is also known as the eastern savannas or the Llanos Orientales, which is the region that I will be talking about. The grassland plains are located in the Colombian Orinoco Basin, just here, a little bit north from the Amazon forest. And in this area, the seasonality of the precipitation and the natural fires have created just a unique landscape dominated by grasses. And we'll see more about it in future slides. So to go on our trip to Los Llanos, we're going to start in Bogota. Bogota is the capital city of our country. It's a very vivid city that holds about 11 million people. It is located 2,600 meters above sea level, and it is surrounded by beautiful mountains. You cannot really see them here because the photo is taken from the mountains indeed. From Bogota, to go where I did my research with capybaras, we'll have to take a bus. And we're gonna drive for about 7 hours down the mountains and to the east of the country until we arrive into Yopal. Yopal is the capital city of the state of Casanare, where we're gonna stop. And there in Yopal, we're gonna buy everything we need for the field season, including food for all the time we're gonna be in there. From Yopal, we're gonna drive 2 more hours to a small town called Atocorozal. In this small town, we're gonna have a rest, spend the night, and then the next day, very early, we're gonna start our journey to the place where I did my field work. So if we start this journey early enough, we might be lucky to drive through one of the most amazing sunrises, as the one that I'm showing you in this picture. And when the sun is already up, we encounter this endless and flat area from where, if the conditions are good enough, you can even see the mountains where Bogota is located. After driving about 3 more hours, we finally arrive to the place where we are going to stay. So this is the jeep we use, and that's all the things we need for doing field work. We cannot forget anything, because if we forget something, communication is rather hard in these remote areas. There is no cell phone signal or electricity. So if you needed to make a phone call, you need to drive a little bit, or maybe horse ride, to an area where you're able to get a little bit of cell signal, and then feel lucky that someone will be able to drive through all what you just did and bring that what you have forgotten. So where we arrive is not really a field station, but it's often the house of a landowner that is very much interested in the diversity that they have in their property. So we may not have all the commodities of a field station, but staying with the local people give us an opportunity to learn about their culture and about the world, that the way they see it, and also to do science and share what we learn about the world they live in with them. So here, I'm not gonna give her name, but she helped us cooking every day. And this day she was just showing me indeed how to make envueltos. Envueltos is a typical dish that is wrapped in a banana leaf, and she was just indicating me how to help her and doing everything in the kitchen. On the right photo, you can see the way that meat is preserved in these remote areas where there's no electricity. So you have to put a lot of salt in it and then hang it and under the sun and protect it from flies or little things that like meat as well. After this brief introduction, I'm going to start a bit into the science that took me to this beautiful place. So I always find myself interested in understanding how do animals respond to changing environments. And despite the fact that in the tropics we do not have seasons as we have in Europe, we do have seasons based on rainfall. So as you can see in this graph, which I just made for simplification purposes, we have the months here on the x-axis, January, February, March, and so on. And then we have the precipitation on the left axis. So we have a binomial precipitation regimen. This is basically 2 peaks of high rainfall marked with the blue areas. This goes from May till June, and then again at the end of the year from October to December. And then in between these, we have periods of low precipitation. And what this creates is a very distinct seasonality. A rainy season here on the left, where the savannas are flooded and there is barely dry land where you can travel or walk or anything. And then on the right-hand photo, there is a dry season where there is barely water. These two photos are taken from the exact same place on different seasons or different months. And as you can see, there is a huge difference in the landscape between them. So here in the savannas, I could find this well-defined seasonality that I was looking for. But in addition to this, I also found the capybaras. And as I told you before when chatting with Babette, capybaras are the largest rodents of the world. And they happen to also be a social rodent. They live in groups and they have social hierarchies. The groups vary from just a few 10 individuals up to 120 individuals. And this variation is often related to the seasonality, with large groups being reported during the dry season. So the first question that I wanted to ask during this time refers to the fact that capybaras live in this highly seasonal environment, the rainy season and the dry season, with a very strong difference in water and food availability. So what I wanted to know was if the spatial distribution of capybara groups was influenced by the dynamic of water availability. So in other words, if the ecological conditions in this area strongly affected the spatial distribution of the species. So to do this, I had to identify where the groups were in the area and count how large these groups were. So to do this, the field assistants of the local people, they will help me cutting out these little branches to make these flags that you can see on the photo on the right. And then these flags will make basically a line transect. And I will use this line transect method to basically count the groups that I will see on each side of the transect. So then, once I had the transect, I will go on my horse at a constant speed and I will register the capybaras I found on each side. And this on the right is a photo of a young Adriana on my horse, or well, the one that I had lent. And well, horses are the way we move around in the savannas. Going by foot is not really safe. And cars are not really available over there unless the owner lends you one. So this transects led to a spatial distribution of the groups here. So I'm just showing you like a little toy graph, or how it will look like if I plotted the things just on the computer. So I have the spatial distribution of the groups observed in the study area. And the question that I will ask is something about the basic ecology of the capybaras. Are these groups clumped, or are they evenly or randomly distributed through the space? So when analyzing the spatial location of the groups, we found that they are more randomly distributed during the rainy season, so here, and they are more clumped during the dry season. So how did I find this? So I created a map. I wanted to know if this was influenced by the weather condition or the water availability specifically. So I created a map of the area based on satellite images. And this is what you see here in white. So the gray areas correspond to the water ponds, and the circle corresponds to the spatial location of the capybara group. The size of the circles, it's basically telling us how big these groups were. So when we plot the spatial locations of the herd on top of the map, we can see that the aggregations of the groups occur around the water ponds during the dry season. So this indicates, or basically is telling us, that the habitat structure is actually influencing the spatial distribution of the groups. So it seems that groups are not necessarily larger, but they do aggregate around the remaining water ponds during the dry season. And this makes sense. During the dry season, they are more exposed to predation. So having more individuals around water ponds helps to increase the number of eyes looking for predators, but it also helps reducing the energy stress that is caused by high temperatures during the dry season. So if capybaras are able to adjust their spatial behavior to changes in the environment, then the next question that occurs to me is that if it was possible that they would also adjust the way they socially behave with other members of the group. And so basically, the question was if the ecological differences derived from the weather conditions could influence group cohesion. So to answer this question, I captured and marked around 30 individuals in the population, and I did this during the rainy season where it's easier to lasso them. And then I gave each individual a unique color-coded color. So here you see on the left, the capybara with its color, and here is just a zoom of that color. So you see that the color is protected with like a plastic band, because when they go in this water that is not very clean, it's just mud, it will just make it all muddy, and then it will be harder to see the colors. So it was a protection, but you know, they are rodents, they are like little big rats indeed, and well, didn't last very long, but it worked. So when I captured these individuals, I would sex them. So I would tell if it was a male or a female, and I would also assign an age category. So I would tell if it was a juvenile or an adult. That's the only two categories you can tell by only looking at them. And in the case of females, I would also record if they were lactating or not lactating. So because I have them individually identified, I could observe their affiliative and their agonistic interactions. And I will do this by sitting and observing them during the morning and the afternoon. So I recorded behaviors like foraging together, which is the one that we have here in the left, and then sitting in proximity or sitting in body contact, as the photo shown on the right. Well, they are laying in this case, but just as a way you see what I was looking for. And then I was also interested in cases of fighting or chasing, which I don't have, unfortunately, I don't have a photo of. And during these long hours of observation, where I was just sitting there quietly on my own, this gave me the opportunity to discover a great amount of biodiversity. So among a lot of the things that I saw just observing capybaras, I saw the Orinoco caiman, the Tecus lizard here on the top right, which is also known as tupinambis, the giant anteater here in the bottom left, and the burrowing owl. And this is just a sample of the number of things that I was able to see there. So going back to our study with group cohesion in capybaras, I analyzed these affiliative interactions using social network approach. So here is a toy network where I'm going to use it just to show you that these vertices are representing individuals, and the shape of the vertex represents basically the sex. So here the squares are males. Here's my pointer. The squares are males, the triangles are non-lactating females, and the circles are lactating females. And these lines represent connected individuals, so individuals that interact between them. So we found key biological differences in the social structure of the groups between the dry and the rainy season. First, during the rainy season, the network consisted of 6 components, one of 17 individuals, and then 5 singletons. And then during the dry season, we would have 20 individuals in the big group, and then 2 singletons. Second, we will see that we have large number of subgroups during the dry season. So this big component is subdivided into smaller groups. And we had more subgroups during the dry season than during the rainy season. And also during the dry season, we have a higher degree of centrality, and the individuals were connected with shorter distance to each other. So in addition to this, we also observed that individuals could differ in the social position from one season to the other. So a notable example here is individual number 1. Number 1 is a female, and she was on her own during the rainy season. But during the dry season, she was a very central individual. This suggests that capybaras have a very high flexibility in their social behavior. And perhaps it helps them to cope with this harsh environment. So overall, these social network studies suggest that capybaras in the dry season form very cohesive groups. And perhaps these groups are more efficient in transmitting information, which is important in terms of the group ability to communicate information about the habitat future and also predation danger. And here I'm going to make a little bit of a change in the topic that I'm talking about. So capybaras are not really considered in danger under any conservation category. But this species faces two main threats. The first one is that it is illegally hunted, and the second is that it is considered a pest and a direct competition for cattle. And by the way, in this photo, this guy is not a photo of mine, but this guy is lassoing capybaras. This is the way they hunt them, but it's also the way we use to capture them for research purposes. So capybaras are eaten in a variety of local dishes that are becoming more popular in cities like Bogota. But despite this, Colombia is not a big market of capybara products. It is hunted to be exported to Venezuela, where it is consumed regularly, especially during Holy Week. And this is because the church, during the 16th century, classified capybaras as a fish for dietary purposes. And this was due to its semi-aquatic habits. And since then, the 16th century, capybaras are commonly eaten during Lent in Venezuela. Approximately 400 tons of capybara meat is eaten each year in Venezuela, and this is about 32,000 capybaras per year. So due to this big market in Colombia, capybara is intensively harvested. So back in 1990s, around 5,000 individuals were harvested or hunted. And this caused a big concern among the local citizens who sued the government because of the extensive exploitation of this species and the consequent depletion of the populations. The citizens won, and the government had to invest money in scientific studies to establish a quota to harvest capybaras in Colombia. The photo I'm showing you here is a book that is a result of a big part of these research efforts. It contains, in a scientific but still a usable language for citizens, the projects that have been done to create a sustainable management strategy for capybaras. So from now, I'm going to talk a bit about the projects that I was involved as being part of this initiative. So back in those days, I was working with a research group that was basically called to do all the scientific research for establishing the harvesting quota. So the main goal was to establish or to determine the legal harvesting quota for capybaras. This included not only implementing the science, but also integrating the local people, especially the landowners. The idea was that everyone who wanted to extract capybaras needed to evaluate two characteristics of the population. The first one, the density, and second,
Leitung. Das ist draußen. Und der meint, das hier bin ich und ich will es rausschicken.
A step in this process is to estimate population density. The proposed method was a traditional line transect method, the same I described before, that I used to count my capybaras and see where they were located. And this method is used to monitor population abundance. So here in the photo on the left, there is a researcher on the horse, and then the field assistant helping her building the line transects. With this information, we will estimate the density for all the study area. So here's a figure on the right, where you can see in darker colors places where there is high density of capybaras, and in lighter colors where there is lower density of capybaras. Then we need to quantify the habitat viability and its quality. And to do this, we created a series of protocols based on satellite images as the figures that I'm showing you here on the top row. With these figures, we will have to identify the type of habitats in the study area. And this is done by doing interpretation of these satellite images and aerial photographs.
Okay.
Then we will go to the field, and in the field, we will measure photo viability for each of these units that we already identified. So in the photo on the left here, this is me with one of the landowners, and we will combine 9 transects with quadrants to identify first the plants that were available for the capybaras, and second, the abundance of these plants. So as I'm showing you here, this landowner, he's already learning how to do this, so he could either hire a biologist and then supervise that the work is done correctly. So he could apply for a permit to extract capybaras. Then, with this information, we will establish 3 main categories of habitat quality, as I'm showing you here on the bottom row. So the area of the study is divided in these 3 habitat quality categories, being the red ones, the high quality, and the light yellow, the low quality areas. And then we will put all this information together as the last step, and we'll put it into a population model. This model will include age and sex structure, and as well as the carrying capacity that we determine for each of the habitat quality categories. And depending on this habitat availability and the quality and the population size, the model will determine the percentage of capybaras that could be harvested on a given year for a given area. But capybaras are highly social. And then this is, again, part of my master's dissertation. They live in groups with dominance hierarchy, where there is a dominant male and a dominant female, and subordinate males and females. And so we know that sociality has an effect on populations. So it came to my mind at that point how social behavior of capybaras could influence population dynamics. So here, for sociality, I'm going to focus on 2 characteristics of rodents: infanticide and reproductive suppression. These 2 characteristics have not been reported for capybaras, but there is good evidence that they can be happening in these species. So here I'm going to explain a little bit why. So in several species, it has been reported that when a dominant male dies, the male that replaces this dominant male can kill all the offspring, because the offspring is not his. Also, females can kill their offspring when environmental conditions are not good enough, or when there is very high density of individuals. So maybe if you have a hamster or a rat pet, you might have seen that they can kill and eat their offspring. Also, in a species where there is female dominance hierarchy, dominant females can suppress the reproduction of subordinate females. And as I told you, female capybaras also have a dominance hierarchy, and they live in these polygynous groups where kind of like a harem, where there is a male with multiple females. So the dominant female could suppress the reproduction of the subordinate females. And also, we have seen that different females can lactate or feed different pups that are not necessarily theirs. So this tells us that it perhaps can happen that we find infanticide and reproductive suppression in capybaras. So to explore these 2 traits, to check if these 2 traits could influence population dynamics, I developed a sex-age structure population model to evaluate the effect of infanticide and reproductive suppression under different hunting scenarios. So in the first scenario, this is the baseline, there is no hunting there. And then we have a second scenario where we have hunting, and then we added a probability of infanticide occurring in the population. And in the third scenario, we have hunting and a probability of reproductive suppression. So in the next slides, you will see 3 graphs representing each of these scenarios that I just explained. In the x-axis, you will see the time. It goes from 0 to 600, representing or equivalent to 50 years of simulation. And then on the y-axis, you have the herd size. And here we are working with herd equivalent to group size. This is basically represents the sizes of the social groups we saw in the field. So all simulations started with 18 individuals, that's the average group size. Under the no hunting scenario, which didn't include any of the social traits, the population reaches carrying capacity at 25 individuals. And then when we add infanticide, this line is the same as this one, it's just in a bigger, and here this is the same one as this one. So when we add infanticide, we can see that it's a little bit of a short-term effect on the population, but the population recovers to its carrying capacity. When we add reproductive suppression, what we see is that the population remains in low numbers. So it really never reaches carrying capacity, and indeed it just goes down. Then for the hunting scenarios, we will consider 3 strategies. One in which we only hunt females, the other one in which we only hunt males, and then the third one will be if we hunt both males and females. So for the case of infanticide, if we hunt males, there is not much of an effect. There is a short-term effect at the beginning of the simulation. But when we hunt females, we can see that the population doesn't reach the carrying capacity. And this effect is stronger when we hunt both males and females. This same pattern is similar under the reproductive suppression scenario, but the effect of males is larger in this scenario. So based on this, we could say, or we could think that to protect the population in the long run, we would expect that harvesting can be enforced to be selective or directed toward individuals of a specific sex and age. So to wrap up this talk, I will basically want to talk to you about the second threat that capybaras have, and this is the human-wildlife conflict. Capybaras are considered a pest due to its healthy population numbers compared to other species in the habitat. Capybaras are herbivores, and so, as you can see here, they share the space with cattle. And because they are herbivores, people believe that they are in direct competition with cattle for food, and especially during the dry season, when, as I told you before, we have seen in various photos, grass is very scarce. So people like to kill them, or people kill them because they think that they are basically taking the grass that the cattle should be eating. Added to this, capybaras heavily use water ponds for all the activities you can imagine. They do all the metabolic things in there, like they pee, they poo, they rest in water, they socially interact in water. So basically water is a very, very important resource for them. And this creates conflicts with humans because people believe that capybaras contaminate water, and because of this, it is a potential source of disease to cattle. This effect is stronger during the dry season, as I show here in this picture, in this photo. The water during the dry season, it's not as transparent, right? It's very muddy. And then we add everything that capybara is doing there. So here we have a capybara drinking water, but imagine a cattle drinking this kind of water. So then it comes to the mind of the people that this is damaging the cattle, or it's basically putting it in danger. So these two reasons make capybaras unwanted in their natural ranges. And these, added to the meat market, can become a real threat for these populations. And this has been already happening in some areas of Colombia, where some population has been considerably diminished, and they are really hard to find when before they were basically everywhere in the savannas. So with this, I just want to thank the various institutions that have led and support this research, to my current institution for its support with the time that I invest in the presentation, and to all the local people that was involved in these projects. And to you for your attention, and Babette for your invitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the interesting talk, Adriana. I learned again a lot. So I was just wondering, at the end, the capybaras, do they have, or do you think they have a special task or a special input which is important for the savannas?
Like their ecological function?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So capybaras are grass eaters, right? So on one hand, they help with grass growth, basically. So they maintain the grass, they allow the grass to grow. That's one part. And the second part, this is a very, it's basically for the predators, which are basically pumas. This is the main source of food. Also for caimans and crocodiles, this is the main source of food. So if we don't have capybaras, then the next in line, it's cattle, indeed. So then you have two of them, two basic functions of capybaras in the population.
Okay, so like you said before, the people think cattle are in danger because, or contaminated because of the capybaras, but maybe they're also protecting them.
Yes, I mean, well, we cannot say that a puma is not going to take over a cow because it's an easy target. But if they have enough capybaras, then they don't need to. It's easier to take a pup. They often go for pups, like a small capybaras, and they are easy to hunt, really. We as humans can even take them, just walking by them.
So we have some questions in the audience I would like to give to you. There's one: how did you get the idea to choose, I think this means this idea, to choose capybaras as your study object?
System, yeah. From where? It was kind of a lucky time, I guess. So at the time I was finishing my undergrad degree, the group that I was working, which is the Conservation and Wildlife Management Group at Universidad Nacional de Colombia, they were working with the government establishing this quota. So they were already working with this. And initially, the idea was to go there as an undergrad, which I couldn't because at the time in Colombia, we didn't have, we didn't have security to go to the field at that point. So I had to postpone it. And after that, well, I was lucky to go on and study them. So it was like a lucky charm somehow because the group was already working on them. So I didn't know about them before I started thinking about my undergrad thesis.
So you didn't knew them before you worked with them?
No, I learned about them during my undergrad, working with this research group.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in before you studied and worked, have you seen some of
Well,
them before?
now I am from a different part of Colombia, so and I've never been in the Llanos, so I'm going to go back to this slide. Um, so here, if you can see my pointer, this is the range, the mountain range where my city is located. My city, which is Bucaramanga, is located somewhere here, and that's mountain. Capybaras are not in the mountains. They are pretty much all over lowlands, especially savannas. They go from here, Orinoco, all the way down to Brazil and Argentina.
Okay.
So no, I never had the chance to meet them, but once you meet them, you fall in love with them.
Okay, so the next question is, are these animals dangerous for people when they are in such large family groups? I guess they are not used to people. So I know from Italy that the wild pigs, people are afraid of them when they come, the moms with their little pigs, or also if the masculine come and they will start to attack you maybe. So
Yeah.
do you have to be afraid of capybaras?
No, that's the thing with them. They are very docile, I would say. I would sit there in probably 20 meters away from the group, and they wouldn't even care of me. Well, of course, at the beginning, they are not very comfortable, I would say, as in a human word, with you around. So they have to get used to you sitting there, and they have to learn that you're not a threat to them. So that's one of the reasons why I have to arrive on foot, or if I would use the horse, I would have to go at a certain speed. So they do realize that they have made the connection of horses at certain speed and the fact that they hunt them on horse. So if you're horse riding not very fast or very fast, then they will flee. But if you're on foot or you are just walking with the horse, or galloping, I think is a correct term for that speed, then they stay there. They don't flee. So they are quite docile. If they feel that you're a threat, they will attack you. So when we were catching them for marking, one of them, because they are very agile in the water, I mean, you can, it's like they were born in the water or something like that. But they are very agile, and one of them bite the horse, and so we had to take care of the horse, but only because he felt very threat at that point. But I was never attacked by them.
And do they begin to make contact to humans?
No.
No. So they are just looking.
They literally ignore me. I was part of the landscape.
Okay. So the next question is, why is it not safe to walk through the savannah by foot?
That's a good question. Well, in the savannas, we have venomous snakes, very highly venomous ones that I was often afraid of. Horses are able to pick on them, so they will get very scared when they smell one or see one. I would see my horse will start running, and I would never see the snake, but my field assistants will tell me that it's often because there is a snake around. My field assistant pointed me out several of these snakes when we were walking to so we will leave the horses in a place where they could rest, and then we will walk to the place where we would do the observations. And he would point me out where the snakes were. So you really need to know where you're stepping, because you never know. Then you also have the pumas around you, so you're easy target for puma. And on foot, you don't really run that fast. So those are the two main threats in the savannah.
So, as I understood well, your field assistants come always from the area there. So they're very common with the situation.
Yes.
Next question is, do people like capybaras?
A lot of people like them. Indeed, that's why they sue the government when they learn about this exploitation that they had back in 1990s. But not every landowner agrees with having capybaras around in their lands. So it's a tricky one, but I would say that they like it more than they dislike it.
So there's the next question, as I see, do people feel disgust like we do here in Europe, or at least in Germany, like with rats? So I think most people don't like very much rats. So rats are, certain people
No.
rats as home animals, but mostly they don't like them, I would say.
Yeah, no, people don't know. They are really easy to like, and they don't look very rat-like. So, that, like I said, people relate them more with like a pig.
Okay.
So I guess that's a good point for them. If they look like rats and then they have conflict with cattle, I think that will be harder for the population.
So the common attached to them is also not like with a pig here. For us, a pig, I think, is or a farmer has a pig, but pigs are meat, I would say, for common mostly. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
capybaras are also meat for people. I didn't want to show photos of like capybara meat, as in like how people will process that in the field. So part of being and staying with local people and learning about the culture, it's also learning why they hunt, what they hunt, and how they do it as well, right? And so in the savannas, they don't have access to meat, despite the fact that they raise cattle, right? But the cattle it doesn't belong to the people who is taking care of the farms. It belongs to the owners, and the owners are often living here in Bogota, right?
Okay.
So they have to hunt wild meat. And capybara, one single capybara is, they will catch the little ones because they taste better, and that will make 20 kilos of meat. So that's a good deal. They also have pigs, but pigs are less liked in the savannas because they mess up with the soil. And so there is a huge problem with pigs, but pigs do not belong to the savanna. So they are indeed trying to come up with a management strategy to try to reduce the population of pigs.
So, but the capybaras are only wild animals in Colombia.
In Colombia, because in Argentina, they were able to create captive breeding programs.
Okay. For meat or for?
In Argentina, they use them for the leather. So they don't eat the meat, they just use the leather.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Is there any more questions? I don't see any more questions here at the chat, but maybe somebody wants to put another question in the chat. Adriana, I really always like very much to talk to you, to have you on this online talks. I was wondering today also one more question of my side. I think to do science, also field work, is very different at our institute or in the areas of our institute than in Colombia where you work. You feel this as well?
Yeah, it is different. So, well, here you have very remote areas and there are not that many field stations with facilities for researchers. So that's something that biologists in general are working on, I would say. So now that I'm here, I've learned about some other research stations where people are going to do research. But in general, you have to have contacts with local people if you want to do research here. It's part of that, and that not only ensure your safety, which is very important, but also access to the resources, because most of the land is private. Well, unless you want to work in the national parks, that's the other option, national parks. But it is different. It is a little harder here.
So in all overview, you would say it's harder to do the kind of science you do in Colombia, or in Europe or Germany, or what advantage do we have here in Germany, and what advantage do you have in Colombia? If you can tell us something about that.
Advantages. I mean, you have so places in Germany are, I would say, sort of easy to access, and then there is this very important point that is safety, right? So safety not only for the researchers but also for the equipment. That is not to say that we cannot do research here or we are totally unsafe in Colombia, but we're still working on that mentality of having things around. Like first to do research, we often go to remote areas. So doing research here, like you do in Cell, just Lucy's group that works with the great kids just around the institute, right? It's hard to do it here in Bogota because here it's not safe for the equipment. It could be safe for you, but not for the equipment, right? And then
that means not safe in so they would steal your equipment, or
there is a good chance. There's 11 million people, and
okay.
yeah, it's a big city. It's not easy, but urban studies have been done in smaller cities with very good success. Here in Colombia, like where I come from, they use a university campus as a place for doing this kind of research. So they are monitoring the bird populations in there. And I've learned about other studies that are not so strong yet. Because the other point is that in Colombia, we have a different tradition of research, more into, more directed to biodiversity and learning about all the biogeography of our country, and perhaps less into the area of animal behavior. So we're just getting into that one.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting topics. I think it would be nice to hear more about this differences maybe one day. Maybe we should do one day, see how these different kinds of places have their different kinds of motivation for science also.
Yeah, that'll be great.
We should invite from different countries people and see what is this discussion about.
Like a plenary.
Yeah. Okay, Adriana, I think there is at the moment no more question as I see, and I really say a great thank you to you, and hope to see you very quick again, either in reality here in Brussels or we do another talk. Or I was also thinking we just this is maybe for the audience not that important, but we just started a collaboration with youth with Galapagos.
Oh.
And I always think that would be something very nice to do it also with you in Colombia. So I talk to you in the next weeks about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Babette, for the invitation. You know how much I enjoy participating in the Maxine activities. So whenever.
Very nice that you tell us this, and I always enjoy very much to have you with us, either in reality or in here in virtuality.
And I very much hope I can visit soon.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. See you and have a good, I think, day. What time is it with you?
Yep. It's going to be 2 in the afternoon.
2 in the afternoon. Okay. A good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone for listening.